And to give you an idea of where this is taking us in dogs, this is a 2002 cover of Science magazine. It's the very first time that a dog was ever on the cover of Science magazine. Science magazine is one of those two magazines that every scientist hopes to publish, and the other one's Nature. And, it's like buying a lottery ticket. If you want to win, you have to buy a lottery ticket, and 99% of us never send a paper to Science, me included. But they publish hot stuff. And everybody wants a cover of Science. I'd love to have a cover of Science. I just can't imagine them being interested in anything I do. But they were interested in something that Brian Hare did. Brian Hare is a physical anthropologist. He did this work as a graduate student at Harvard. He is now at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. And he was interested in how chimps think. Why? Because chimps are our closest ancestor. Yes, through shared derived character traits, chimps are humans' closest living relatives. You can argue about whether the small chimps that are a different species are the same. We're not going to have that argument. But that group is certainly our closest relative through shared derived character traits, including molecular traits. What he thought was as follows. One of the tests of how complex your thought process is what you can communicate about something that's hidden. Okay? You communicate about hidden stuff all the time. Every time you ask somebody, where is, you communicated about something hidden. I had to ask 5 people where the bathrooms were. I got 5 different answers, by the way, none of which were correct. So they remained hidden. But you communicate about hidden stuff all the time. That's a pretty hard thing to communicate because it requires the understanding of the abstract state and the ability to give cohesive directions when there is no map. So it's complex. And they decided that they would look for the ability to communicate about hidden stuff in chimps. Then the question was raised by somebody in the lab, well, what if it's not through shared derived character traits? What if this is something that you learn by living with humans? So they decided to work on domestic dogs also. And then somebody else in the lab said, what if it's really, we're using humans as the control for chimps? What are we going to use as the control for domestic dogs? What if this is just a canine thing? So they used hand-reared wolves. So they've now got hand-reared wolves, domestic dogs, and chimps. And they are going to hide something that those animals would want but cannot smell because of the way they've handled it. And a human is going to signal where the stuff is hitting by doing one of 3 things. The human is going to walk up to the box. There are boxes everywhere. They're going to walk up to the box and they're going to go, okay? Most of you would probably open the lid then. They're going to point. You might expect dogs could do that because they're pointers. They do that. Bird. There. I have a pointing Australian Shepherd. You have a pointing Shar-Pei. There's a pointing group of Labradors, and they're advertised as pointing Labradors. Okay, and somebody's working on the genes to look at, pointing in dogs. Okay, the other thing you can do is something that's much more subtle, and it's just a gaze. And you've all used this when it's time to leave the party. You've looked at your significant other and you've begun to go. Okay, that type of thing. So they did that, and the amazing thing was that the only one of those 3 species who was able to do all of those was the domestic dog. Domestic dogs share our cognitive processes in ways we cannot even begin to understand. And I argue, and I can't prove it yet, but I've certainly spurred on Adam McCloskey in Hungary to begin to think about this. I think that we probably co-evolved with dogs. I think that there are a lot of things going on that we can't understand. Most people would argue that, yes, dogs are domesticated. I think it goes further than that. I think we co-evolved with them. I think that human brains and dog brains work more alike than any other 2 species out there. And I think that's because we were able to recognize a like social system. Dogs were able to recognize our vocalizations because actually they're very much like theirs. And I give all the credit to the dog in this relationship because I'm not sure humans would have taken the first step. We certainly recognized that dogs could keep us warm, and I think that was one of the prime functions of early dogs, and no one talks about it. Yet, in very ancient cave dwellings, canine fur is often found with human skeletons. So I think that was important. And we rely on them for all sorts of other things. And we co-evolved in part because we shared a social system. So this is the first piece of work that said, your dog may be a lot smarter than you think. The second piece came out in June of 2004, and it's only one dog. But this is a dog, a border collie, of course, by the